The 80s. If you grew up back then, you know exactly why that decade was so unforgettable. It was a time when childhood was pure adventure, filled with the thrill of exploration and maybe a bit of chaos too. There was no internet, no smartphones, just a lot of freedom, a whole lot of neon, and some truly memorable, and maybe a little bizarre moments that made being a kid in the 80s both the best and sometimes the worst. So, let's dive into a few of those memories and see if they bring back a smile or maybe an eye roll. Playing outside all day, and no cell phones to track us down. Summers in the 80s meant endless days outside, from morning until dusk. We'd hop on our bikes and disappear into the neighborhood, heading to the park, exploring creeks, or setting up games in any open field we could find. And our parents? They didn't have GPS or cell phones to track us down. They trusted that we'd be back when the streetlights came on. It was the best feeling of freedom, but looking back, a bit nerve-wracking too. Could you imagine giving today's kids that kind of freedom? Iconic toys, and the struggle to get them. Oh, the toys of the 80s. Cabbage Patch Kids, Transformers, My Little Pony, Light Bright, and the original Nintendo. These were the holy grails of every kid's wish list, but getting them was no easy task. There were shortages, long lines, and sometimes outright toy wars. Remember the thrill and maybe the tears when you finally got that prize toy, or the heartbreak when you didn't? The fashion choices we thought were cool. Oh, the outfits we wore. Neon colors, leg warmers, parachute pants, oversized sweaters, and scrunchies in every color of the rainbow. And let's not forget those iconic mullets and bowl cuts. At the time, we felt so cool strutting around in our shoulder pads and acid-wash jeans. But now, looking back at those family photos, let's just say it was both a blessing and a curse to grow up with 80s fashion. Who else has a few cringe-worthy family photos stashed away? The magic of renting movies and video games. Before streaming, there was the thrill of going to the video store on a Friday night. You'd browse row after row of VHS tapes, hoping your favorite movie wasn't rented out. And if you were lucky, you might get to pick up a Nintendo game for the weekend. But if someone else snagged it before you, pure disappointment. There was something magical about browsing those aisles, even if the movie you wanted wasn't there. Do you remember the excitement of finding a new release on the shelf? School life was a whole different world. School in the 80s was its own adventure. Dodgeball in gym class was practically a survival sport, and teachers weren't afraid to hand out a bit of extra motivation if you misbehaved. And if you got called to the principal's office, word spread fast. There was no hiding it. Plus, school lunches were a mix of mystery meat and Jell-O squares that jiggled a little too much. There was no cafeteria app or special diet-friendly menu. It was all or nothing. Saturday morning cartoons were everything. Nothing beat the excitement of waking up early on a Saturday, grabbing a big bowl of sugary cereal, and settling in for hours of cartoons. The Smurfs, He-Man, Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, each one was an adventure in itself. Back then, Saturday mornings were sacred, and the only day kids could count on uninterrupted cartoon bliss. But if you missed an episode, that was it. No DVR, no streaming, just the long wait until the next Saturday. Remember the heartbreak of missing your favorite show? If this stroll down memory lane is bringing back some good memories, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I'd love to share more of these nostalgic moments with you, the wonders and terrors of 80s technology. From cassette players to clunky computers, the tech of the 80s was both fascinating and frustrating. Remember rewinding cassette tapes with a pencil or waiting ages for your computer game to load? And just when you thought you'd mastered the latest gadget, something new came along. If you wanted to record your favorite song from the radio, you had to sit with your finger on the record button, hoping the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro. The struggle was real. The ultimate glow of glow-in-the-dark everything. The 80s had an obsession with glow-in-the-dark items. From stickers to shoelaces to toys, if it could glow, we wanted it. Going to bed with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling made nighttime a little less scary, and glow bracelets were the accessory of every sleepover. But of course, they didn't last forever, and we'd be left with a dark room once the glow faded. Who else remembers the thrill of turning off the lights just to see everything glow? Classic family road trips, without modern comforts. Road trips in the 80s were a rite of passage. Packed into the family station wagon, we had no DVDs, iPads, or cell phones to pass the time. Instead, we counted license plates, played I Spy, and maybe even fought with siblings in the back seat. Air conditioning was a luxury, and the only entertainment was the radio or an 8-track. It was both the best and the worst of times, but those memories are priceless. Can you still smell that classic vinyl car seat on a hot summer day? Halloween was both spooky and a bit dangerous. Halloween in the 80s was a whole adventure on its own. We'd wear costumes made from whatever we had at home, or if we were lucky, a store-bought plastic mask with the tiniest eye holes. And then we'd head out into the neighborhood with pillowcases, filling them to the brim with candy. But safety rules were a little looser back then. No reflective gear, minimal adult supervision, and candy we didn't think twice about eating. It was thrilling and a little risky, but hey, that was Halloween in the 80s. The magic and pain of slip and slides. Summers weren't complete without the classic slip and slide. You'd unroll it on the lawn, hook up the hose, and run as fast as you could before belly flopping onto that thin strip of plastic. It was exhilarating, and sometimes painful if you hit a patch of grass or a rock underneath. But nothing beat that rush of sliding through the water on a hot day. Do you remember the thrill of a perfect slide? Fast food was a treat. Unlike today, fast food in the 80s wasn't an everyday thing. It was a special treat. Going to McDonald's or Burger King felt like an event, especially if you were lucky enough to snag a Happy Meal with a toy. Remember those early Ronald McDonald playgrounds? They were simple and a bit rough around the edges, but to us, they felt magical. Can you imagine the excitement of seeing the golden arches back then? Walkmans were our ultimate freedom. The Walkman was the 80s kids' ticket to freedom. Just pop in your favorite cassette, slip on those foam headphones, and suddenly you were in your own world. You'd make mixtapes, trade cassettes with friends, and rewind endlessly to your favorite songs. But of course, if the batteries died, your soundtrack stopped right there. Remember the frustration of running out of juice mid-song? School fundraisers with awkward prizes. Who remembers school fundraisers with catalogs filled with all kinds of random items? We'd be tasked with selling wrapping paper, candy, or knickknacks to family and neighbors, hoping to earn points for prizes like tiny toys, a boombox, or maybe even a mini TV. It felt like a big mission, and a bit of a hustle. Did you ever manage to earn one of those prized gadgets? The excitement and agony of arcade games. The 80s were the golden era of arcade games. Whether it was Pac-Man, Space Invaders, or Galaga, every trip to the arcade was an adventure. We'd line up with quarters in hand, ready for our turn, and if we set a high score, it felt like a massive victory. But when the game ended and game over flashed on the screen, there was no continue option unless you had another quarter ready. Sticker collecting was a serious hobby. Back then, stickers were gold, especially scratch and sniff, or holographic ones. We'd trade them with friends and fill up entire sticker books. There were puffy stickers, glittery ones, and those oh-so-precious scratch and sniffs that smelled, well, sort of like the real thing. Losing a prize sticker was devastating, but collecting them was all part of the fun. Do you still have a sticker book hidden away somewhere? TV dinners were a special, if questionable, treat. Every so often, our parents would let us pick out a frozen TV dinner. It felt so grown up to have our own meal, complete with little compartments for meat, mashed potatoes, and, if we were lucky, a brownie. The food might not have been the best, but it was a novelty that made any evening feel like a treat. Who else remembers the taste of those mashed potatoes? Polaroid cameras captured all the best moments. Before digital cameras, Polaroids were the magic makers. Snap a photo, wait a few seconds, and out would pop a picture that slowly developed right before your eyes. Capturing memories on a Polaroid felt like creating something tangible, something real. And if you messed up the shot, well, there went your film. Anyone else still have an old Polaroid picture stashed away? Getting lost in choose-your-own-adventure books. These books were a thrill. Each story gave you choices that could lead to daring rescues or disastrous endings, making reading feel like a real-life adventure. The choices seemed endless, and sometimes you'd cheat by flipping back if your choice led to a bad ending. These books let us be heroes in our own stories. Do you remember the excitement of picking your next path? Ice cream trucks with all the best treats. Hearing the jingle of the ice cream truck rolling through the neighborhood was like music to our ears. We'd race to grab coins and rush outside to choose our favorites. Push-ups, bomb pops, Choco Tacos, and those character pops with bubblegum eyes. The excitement of seeing that truck is something that's hard to forget. What was your go-to ice cream truck treat? Looking back, it's easy to see why growing up in the 80s was such a mix of pure joy and occasional frustration. The freedom, the fun, the simplicity, all of it made our childhoods feel like one long adventure. But with the thrills came a few trials that made life interesting, to say the least. So what about you? Do you have any memories of the best or worst parts of growing up in the 80s? Drop your stories in the comments and let's relive those unforgettable moments together.